Number one, he is the usher at the airport, ushering the guests into Uganda. Moments later, he introduces them to Uganda in what we call briefing. Now he has changed roles. He starts being a host. And then after that, he puts them, or she puts them in the car. Now he becomes the driver, takes them to the hotel. And then the following morning, when they have rested, he becomes the professor on Uganda. He gives them what we call a detailed briefing about the itinerary. The itinerary, unfortunately, which he did not create. And I'm saying this, unfortunately, deliberately, because tour operators that Johnny mentioned about, who do not do this as something critical, they do it as a business for a quick dime, do not involve the people who run the itineraries in the designing of the itineraries. But the tourist guide is switched on. He tells them the detailed brief of how the whole journey will be for the next 19 days if they're here for 20 days. Now he has taken on the role of the tour operator who designed the program. And if there are any questions and things that are not aligning well, he has to defend the tour company. And then he does the journey. I'll give an example. While on the journey, a car develops a mechanical problem, and then he becomes a mechanic or the fleet manager who must find a solution for this car that is not performing well. He's either fleet manager or mechanic. Get the problem fixed. And then when he gets, let's say, to Ziwa Rhino, the guests go for a rhino walking experience. He is coordinating with the restaurant, now he's host again, to make sure that the guests will have lunch on time. And while he's running the safari, a client develops a stomach problem. He has to make sure that this client is fine. And the client says, no, I'm not feeling well, maybe we should stop the tour here. That means a different story to the tour operator. He has to give back the money that already, part of it went to the government, bought gorilla permits. And we don't want our government to lose that money. So he has to keep thinking of remedies and say, did you carry some medicine for your stomach? If you did not carry some medicine for your stomach, what do you normally use? Does this usually happen? What do you normally do? Do you think we should get medical attention? Now he's becoming a caregiver. And then during you're in nature now in the national park, he has to do the sighting, he has to do the interpretation, he has to relate everything to conservation and the communities around the parks. And if there are no sightings, he has to explain why there are no sightings. Why? Because on the internet, when the client read, they came with a promise. They bought a promise. People say that in tourism, we sell a promise. They bought a promise that when we visit Uganda, we will see lions. Even if it wasn't promised, they hope that since we are going to a national park where these animals are, we will see them. And when they don't see them, they start saying, Johnny, do you really have leopards in this park? Are you sure we are in the right park? When we were in Kruger, then they start telling you. And now you have the tourist guide must have the wisdom not to compare Queen Elizabeth with Kruger. If they don't have that wisdom, then they become defensive. And that's when things begin to go south. But if they have the wisdom, they are able to explain that these are two different countries, two different parks, but also this is nature, that it is not a zoo, but politely, because when people use that expression, but I find it rude. He already knows it's not a zoo, anyhow. So he has now to become the conservationist, to explain movement and availability and patterns of animals, why we may not be able to see them or why we have been able to see them at that time. We are doing sighting, interpretation, and relating of nature and wildlife, and also telling the stories. Fast forward, Another reason why the tourist guide is my champion for tourism in Uganda is that he has to make sure that this client is satisfied and gets to Entebbe airport in time, even if it's school closing day with all the traffic jam that we have. He has to plan and make sure that this guest does not miss his flight. And at the airport, and the guest on the other side is...
But the pressure.
So for me, I don't know who would be your champion. This is the person, and he doesn't know what UTB promised, the Uganda Tourism Board promised on the roadshow. He doesn't, I'm being honest here. The tour guide doesn't know what the Uganda Tourism Board promises the people when they go on the roadshow in Canada or America or South Africa. He doesn't know what the tour operator tells the client while on email here. He doesn't know a lot, but he must have the ingenuity, he must have the wisdom to appropriate and represent all these players, and at the end of the day, make Uganda either shine or go down deep. For me, that is my champion of tourism. And until now, I think people had not stopped to think about this fact. That's why Johnny and I and the whole team of volunteers, by the way, we've put together this conference through volunteers. No single person has earned a dime. Matter of fact, the lady and young people that you see around, they pay their own borders and we fuel our own cars and buy our lunches for the last 6 months to put together this conference. But the tourist guide has been out of this loop, if you would call it the value chain, that there has been a lot of discussion and prioritization on many subsectors within. But yet we know that this tourist guide is the glue or that thread that binds everything together. And that's why we are very passionate when we realize that. Remember, I mentioned that the annual Tourist Guides Conference is data-driven because we talked to tourists, not 1 or 10. We're talking about 100 tourists who gave us feedback. So that's actually where the inspiration comes from. So the conference is data-driven. The other goal is that it is catalytic, like to just cause hunger and thirst and restlessness, to touch those pressure points for people in the industry to realize that there is something that we have been missing. And it is a gathering that brings together all stakeholders, led by tourist guides for purposes of developing tourist guides, but inviting the whole clan. That is the whole idea. That's me answering your question. My number one champion of tourism is the tourist guide, and it's at different points. There are national tourist guides, there are site guides, there are ranger guides in the parks. Those are the 3 different categories at the different levels. And for me, that is my tourism champion. I have seen them. I have talked to everyone from the marketers, the apex bodies, to the guy at the site, let's say at Amabere Ganyina Muiru or Seziwa Falls. The guy at Seziwa Falls who explains the story of the twins and how the different rivers parted. And the client goes like, wow, what a story. That is my champion.